to The Birth of a New Dimension. My name is Aurora, and this week I'm going to be speaking about the abstract source of consciousness, which is also the destination for all of our consciousness. So I've spoken about this many times before. It is the zeroth dimension, or infinity, or the presence of everything, or the hole in the donut hole when we describe the shape of the cosmos as being like a donut, or being a toroidal shape, torus or a toroidal shape. So the tor in the torus is the hole, it's the center. And when we look at the way that energy flows around this basic energetic shape, energetic form, it's a figure eight in cross section. So the center of a figure eight, where the two loops are pinched in like a tight waist, that is the center of the tor, that is the donut hole. And the flow of energy is flowing constantly through those two loops of the figure eight and meeting at that crossing point, and then flowing and then meeting again. So the idea of it being the zeroth dimension means that it is the place that everything flows through, and we can see it as a place of overlapping energy. So it is, first of all, one tiny place. It's not like a very large, not like a football arena-sized area. It is a very, very tiny locality. What makes it the presence of everything, or infinity, is that everything is there. Everything is present there. Everything is overlapping there. And that is also the origins of consciousness. So when we say consciousness, it is the light behind your eyes. It's the sense of self, the sense of an awareness being inside of you. That spark of consciousness emanates from the source of consciousness. And so if you are new to this radio broadcast, I've spoken about this many, many times, how photons are emitted from the sun, and photons are like feelers for the stellar network. And the idea is that if they went in an unimpeded fashion, those photons or light rays or consciousness rays would simply emit endlessly. They would simply go on flying away from the sun or speeding away from the sun, never losing their momentum or energy unless they are acted upon by some aspect of the material world. So they can meet a physical object, bounce off of, or be absorbed by a physical object. Or there are some aspects of gravity that can bend and shift light and change the way that it is moving. It can be refracted, like light that is bent, like, for example, going through a prism, and that changes it slightly, changes the speed that it is going. So the whole idea with this is that light and consciousness and awareness are all being emanated from the stellar network, and the sun is our nearest broadcaster from the stellar network. And that light, when it coalesces into matter, this becomes our body, this becomes the physical world, this becomes the physical arena, or the stage upon which various particles and forces and aspects of consciousness can play or interact with one another. And that's what we are presently experiencing here in this physical body. I'm presuming that my audience is comprised of physical, organic, multicellular beings, like I'm wearing a human body, and so are all of you. And so this is the idea that we are in this physical reality, and we've been emanated from the source, or the zeroth dimension, and we're supposed to have an unbroken bridge of consciousness, a connection that keeps us, let's say, nourished by ideas and awareness from the source that emanated us. And this is very crucial because it's not the experience that most humans, in a body right now are having. Mostly during recorded human history and right now on Earth, what humans experience is to grow a fetus, be physically born, and to have your consciousness be in the physical body, and for about the first year of one's life, to be connected to a sense of higher consciousness, to be connected to the oceanic consciousness of the world. This is undifferentiated consciousness, as opposed to when we begin to grow the membrane of our ego. And that's analogous to the cell membrane. The cell membrane divides the intracellular stuff from the extracellular stuff, and then cells have a different modality of behavior regarding what's quote-unquote inside the cell membrane and what is quote-unquote outside the cell membrane. Cells have to metabolize the energy that is inside of the membrane, and they have to care for all of the organelles that are inside of the membrane. Cells do not necessarily have to care for and maintain what is outside of their membrane. So this is a very crucial distinction, and I've spoken a lot about how this creates duality. Our basic biological structure has programmed into it this sense of duality, thing versus thing, and the two things are separated by a barrier. So the cell wall is a very visible barrier. We can point to it in space. The ego, or the narrative structure of self, is a different type of membrane that we develop as a mental construct, mostly in infancy or in early childhood. And, I'm a walk-in. If you're new to my broadcast, I'm Aurora. I'm a walk-in. So I came into this body when the body was age 27. I did not have the experience of infancy in the human body. However, I did have the experience of ego development and creating a separation between myself and the rest of the world, a process of individuation, wherein when I first came here, I actually didn't have a name. I actually didn't know who I was. I didn't know aspects of personality that I currently know about myself. These are the things that we use as the narrative structure, like my favorite food is avocado or something like that, or my favorite color is rainbow. That when we begin with this narrative structure, it is based upon our life experiences, and we say, this is my name, this is who I am, this is where I'm from, this is what I do, and that is like the creation of the cell membrane, a sense of self, a sense of individuation apart from the rest of consciousness, and a sense of personal responsibility, where you need to feed and take care of and keep safe everything that is inside of your epidermis, or that relates to your individual ego narrative structure, and you are less responsible for what is going on outside of you. And this is all like when people are hyper responsible in psychology, like they feel that it is almost a mental disease, because they feel that, if there's an animal suffering somewhere, they're responsible for it. Like, we need to end all animal suffering. We do need to end all animal suffering. And when I am speaking about this, I am talking about it in the cosmic sense, in the sense of ethical responsibilities that we take as part of being here in the cosmic symphony. So this is all about how we act well with one another. We are not just swimming around in the private kiddie pool of our minds. We are all interconnected in a giant ecosystem of awareness. And just like all of the aspects of an ecosystem, one thing feeds another, one thing nourishes another, that makes it all possible. This is the same with our consciousness. So your trajectory of awareness, of being emanated from the stellar network and coalescing into physical matter, is intertwined with many, many other consciousnesses. And that's not the end of the journey either. As I was trying to get around to, our time here in the physical realm is not meant to be a time away from or separated from that source that emanated us. The separation is temporal and it's not intentional. And it happened due to the genetic degradation that was installed in humanity about 10 or 20,000 years ago. And it is concomitant with the rise of verbalized language in the human operating system. So there's two things. There's the human mind, which is a hacked operating system that is installed at infancy. And there's language. These are like languages like the app or the sub-program that is running in the operating system of your mind. Because the language structure was developed in order to compensate for the loss of telepathy. And telepathy is really sending pure data or pure information that has been unclothed of words. It is just pure insight and pure understanding. So the way that real telepathy happens, it happens on a bridge of love You don't have to use a cell phone or a shortwave radio or any implanted devices in one's body. It happens entirely on a bridge of love. And it is an energy impulse that emanates from the sender, sends out, and if you're sending out a linguistic or verbalized command, something like, hey, I really need some ketchup, then that has to be unclothed into its basic abstract format as data, or as a concept, and then that concept is broadcast to the person that you're sending it to, and then that abstract concept is reinterpreted or translated again into a verbalized understanding by their language filter. So you can be telepathic with someone who lives in a different world and speaks a different language, and yet you can both understand each other telepathically. For example, on Earth's surface right now, a person who speaks English in the United States can be telepathic with someone who speaks Chinese and lives in China. You do not have to emanate, you do not have to learn Chinese, understand how to say the phrase, I really need some ketchup, in Chinese, and then telepathically broadcast that to your Chinese friend. No, what you do is broadcast in your own language, which would be English, the concept of requiring ketchup, which would then be translated into an abstraction sent to your Chinese friend. And when they perceived that abstraction, it would then translate into their understanding of the word, I need some ketchup. So this is how we can also understand linguistic communication between people who are presently on the surface of Earth and who have physical human bodies with flapping, moving mouth parts like what I'm using to contact you right now, and how you can speak with, let's say there's an organization, an organism, a culture of beings that are more shaped like octopi, and they live on a far distant planet, maybe even a distant galaxy. First of all, through the flying rainbow lasagna, we can bend and fold time, space, and consciousness, so we don't have to fly across vast interstellar distances. We can create a bridge of love in order to telepathically talk with these beings and for them to respond back to us. But the question is, do they have to undergo, many tedious hours of learning English in order to properly speak to us? Do we have to undergo many tedious hours of learning their verbalized structure, their culture, their vocabulary, all of that in order to communicate? No. The language filter of that particular species or whomever you are speaking to as an individual would translate your abstract intention as you send it out. So you can send out, now you're understanding more and more, I can tell. It is not necessary when you're telepathic to say a verbalized phrase. You can speak in pictures, in images, in thoughts, and in desires. And this is our true mind. When I am working on my artwork, I am inhabiting my true mind. I am not using my verbalization. I am not using the flapping of my moving mouth parts. And I am able to perceive the totality of my painting and just look at it and know I need to place circles here. I need to paint this green. I need to paint this red. There is not a voice in my head that says, paint this purple, paint this red. It is not my true mind. So I'm able to understand what is my true mind by, the activity of painting and making artwork, because that is when I am in bliss. That is when I am functioning at the optimum rate for this time and place and body. I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing in exactly the way I'm supposed to be doing it. So, of course, I've had times when I've been pressured, like a couple of projects. I painted this giant pyramid many years ago that was on commission. It was not my design, and I had to get it done. It was a rush job, like by a particular day it was part of a big stage show, a big laser light show. And believe me, I was not in my bliss as I was painting away maniacally on that project, trying to get it done on time. So part of the idea of bliss is that we are, self-directed activities that are done in a comfortable way and where you are really enjoying yourself as you are doing it. It's like the difference between, running for your life or having a nice jog or a stroll through the park. It's like two very different feelings. So, and all of this has to do with the genetic structure. Our emotions are different when we are pressured or hurried out. So that changes our emotional structure. It changes our genetic structure. It changes the timelines that we inhabit, because our genes are absolutely the expression of which timelines we are going to be inhabiting. So your genes are not just the description of the shape of your nose or your hair color or some aspect of your ancestry. Your genes are actually the threads that tie you to reality. And once you start to think of them in that way, you will think of things very differently. The things that affect your genes, the things that affect your health. You know, if you ingest a chemical that causes disease, and it causes disease by, like, you know, degrading your genes, either genetic mutations or genetic anomalies in some way, you're now understanding that that substance that you ingested is harmfully affecting your timelines. This is deep, because this goes to genetically modified organisms that are in food. So this is totally backwards, that science is now studying the effect of genetically modified organisms and whether they infect or have an impact on the organisms that are ingesting them. They're finding out, yes, if you eat genetically modified corn, the genes that were modified in the corn, when you eat them, absolutely affect your own genome. This study, of course, should have been done before genetically modified corn was introduced into the food supply. Humans are not supposed to be used as lab experiments, but they are right now. So this also, you can understand why eating wild food is preferable to eating anything that is domesticated. So if you are able to eat, you know, something that lived wild, like an animal that lived wild and then was hunted and not genetically reduced, and then you eat that food, or if you wildcraft your herbs and other vegetables or berries or something like that, you are literally ingesting the timelines of organisms that lived successfully. The berries or leaves or deer meat, you know, the venison that you ate, those are the successful beings that lived on the right timelines. I know you could say maybe not the right timelines if they got shot by a hunter, but they didn't die of disease. They didn't, you know, they're not lame animals. They're healthy. You're eating the healthiest specimens of genes that were not diminished by domestication. And that means there's a level of intelligence there that you have access to on a biological level. The idea that these organisms were exposed to challenges and difficulties, that they had to fight off pathogens, that they had to initiate movement, like to find either, you know, resources, water or whatever, or you know, protect themselves in some way. Plants have an immune system. They have to protect themselves from pathogens and mold and mildew. And same thing with animals that have to protect themselves from diseases and predators. So these organisms that live wild, they not only have a different genome, they experienced different life experiences than, for example, a domesticated plant that was grown in a greenhouse, or a, you know, chicken or some domesticated animal that was raised on a farm. The chicken gets fed whether it's smart or not, whether it works hard or not. It's just fed. And same thing with every, you know, plant that's in the greenhouse. It grows. It is given water and nutrients whether or not it strives. It doesn't have to reach and try to find the right, you know, root structure to crack through the earth and find naturally occurring sources of water. It is simply given the water. And so it's less intelligent and it's less perceptive. And it has fewer challenges in its life, and it's not necessarily part of the intertwining consciousness of this symphony of the world. So domesticated animals, bad enough. Not that I'm saying that we should stop eating animals. I'm saying that because I myself eat animals, and the reason why I do so is in order to ingest enough protein. My body absolutely needs to eat protein 3 times a day. It's just not practical for me to be able to consume enough bulk in the type of protein that is available only in the vegetable realm. And so I'm just sharing this with you, not in order to force anyone to eat in any particular way, but to understand that there is a way to respect all of the food that we are eating by giving it a decent life, a full experience, so that its timelines are properly arranged. And then when you eat that food, your timelines are properly arranged. And of course, we are in transition. It is simply not practical for humanity right now to simply smack dash, like with no transition, go into a pure hunter-gatherer, living off the land lifestyle. It's not practical. It's not what I'm requiring of everyone. I am requiring no more genetically modified organisms because they not only affect your genes when you ingest them, we are submerged here within a symphony. So every plant that is growing is literally emitting a tone like, la, 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 this is the song that I am singing. And some of these plants are very harmonious in the tones that they are emitting, and some of them are not. And the ones that are not harmonious, like genetically modified corn, this is causing difficulties across the board in our ecosystem, especially because there's so much of it being grown. Acres and acres and acres of these out-of-tune musicians that are all singing the wrong song, okay? So they're not on the right timelines. Those ears of corn are not on the right timelines. We are at this, what I speak about here on the radio and what I teach in my class, Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, this is all about achieving multidimensional perception. And we do this by first cultivating unconditional love. Unconditional love is literally a tone. It's not just an airy-fairy ideal. It's not just a nice phrase. It's not just something nice that should exist but doesn't. It actually exists. It's a tone. And when plants are properly tuned to the symphony of the cosmos, they're creating that tone. And then when we eat the plants and animals that are properly tuned to the cosmos, we create that tone. So humanity, being subjected to genetically modified organisms in the past 10 or 15 years, this has absolutely turned humans even worse out of tune than humanity was before. Just have to have a little drink here. Because I describe how humans were changed in their genes, during what is known as the fall of consciousness, or, the end of Atlantis. We used to be light eaters and did not require any intermediaries in order to ingest new timelines. Did not require chlorophyll or chloroplasts or 3 to 5 pounds of gut bacteria, your microbiome helping to digest everything that you put into your body. Humans at that time were able to connect directly to the sun and directly to the stellar network and get all of the consciousness and awareness that feeds our physical format, the light that feeds our body, directly from the sun. And of course, when the human instrument was made out of tune, it became less capable of doing this. There are still some aspects of our body that require light in terms of vitamin D production. Like even if you're not specifically a sun gazer, like I'm a sun gazer, when I first came into this human body, I tried to subsist entirely upon sunlight, and I didn't understand why. I felt very weak. My body was very small. I couldn't do a lot of things. I really had to learn, like, eating food that is physical is necessary here right now. And then I had to learn about the different qualities of food. And so this was all an education for me, just in the very same way that when you were a tiny child, you had to learn about food. You had to learn about what tastes good versus what feels good in your tummy and what makes your body happy, over the long term. I had to learn about all of those things, and that's why I learned that it was not effective for me to be a vegetarian. And also, so in terms of ethics and the morals of domesticating plants and animals, humans in this time and place have domesticated or changed the genetic structure through selective breeding of both plants and animals. Like a carrot, a big fat orange carrot that is not the way it was intended to grow. Queen Anne's lace is the natural form of a carrot, and it is a very tiny little white, very woody root that is kind of a little bit sweet. But if you wanted to put that in your salad, you would have to chew and chew and chew. I don't even think that our teeth and jaw structure is adequate in order to eat food like that. So now you're starting to understand why humans domesticated this food, why humans created soft, juicy carrots that we could eat more easily with our teeth and with our jaw muscles, because we do not have the teeth structure and jaw muscles of, let's say, a gorilla, which has an incredibly strong jaw and spends 50% of its waking time is literally just chewing vegetable material so that it can eat all of those vegetables. This is also, I admire people that wish to treat animals in a good way and live a sustainable existence. It's wonderful to be a vegan and be a raw vegan. I find that you're gonna have to use the Cuisinart. You're gonna have to chop those vegetables up because that is a lot of chewing, and it's not necessarily something that our present physical format can accommodate. So all of this comes down to also love. The unconditional love tone that we create is also a form of acceptance and compassion, where you don't say, blah, blah should be like this, I'm going to force it to be this way. So if you say, this is the present structure of your body, you must love it and accept it. I didn't try to say, I'm living in denial and I'm going to only eat sunlight anyway, because that would not have helped my body. I have to love this body that I'm in and work with it. So since I've been here over the past 15 years, I've learned that I can do both sun gazing and eating physical food. And when I eat my physical food, I really see it and experience it as solidified sunlight. And whenever possible, right now I'm in my garden doing this beautiful recording. I have my little chair and my little table set up out here. Whenever the weather makes it possible, I sit and I eat my food in actual sunlight. And I tend not to eat in front of the television or in front of my computer tablet, watching a video or something like that. If at all possible, my breakfast companion is the sun, because it's like saying, thank you so much for showering this planet with all of your ideas and all of your consciousness and all of your awareness, and that it was created and solidified into this matter that I can then have the experience of eating. And then here's the kicker. I can give you the real-time experience of eating this beautiful food. So, my neighbor delivers these beautiful eggs to me, these beautiful chicken eggs, and her chickens are the best, most pampered birds around. So in terms of, ethically sourced protein, these are wonderful eggs. And I think about that. I think about the sunlight that affects their ability to lay the eggs. There are fewer eggs in the winter, and the, richness of the diet that gives to them, and how all of that comes from light. All of this is about light, and light is information or awareness. It's not merely the abstraction of a photon or something that we can perceive with our retina. It's actual information, just like light along a fiber optic cable. The little tiny repetitive flashes of light that can be transporters of information. So we are eating light all the time, and I know that I described earlier that light, if it were unimpeded, if it simply went on its journey, would simply continue forever. And this is why photons are feelers. The emanation of a photon from the sun means that it's either sensing this light has interacted with something, or it hasn't interacted with something. And we were intended, the somethings that we are interacting with light, we were intended to be real-time broadcasters, saying to the sun and the stellar network, hey, this is what's going on down here. This is what is happening with all of this light. We are not supposed to have some kind of a bifurcation, like getting kicked out of your parents' house at age 18. Like, get out of the house. You're on your own. You're an adult now, and you're going to get out and don't come back. It's not like that at all. No, the sun loves us. The stellar network loves us. We are like children, and, the stellar network is like our parent, and our parent absolutely wants to be involved, even micromanage down to the minutest detail our experience. It is the implantation of the human operating system, which is hacked, and specifically running the sub-program or the app known as verbalized language, that cuts us off from the source that emanated us. And this is why I say to you that we are right now living in an aberrant, or not the way it is intended, format. And what we are supposed to do is regain control of our hacked operating system. This is through meditation and mindfulness. And both of these practices are learning to control verbalization in the mind. So when you meditate, and I don't have to teach you about this, there are meditation teachers that you can check out that are really masters of how to share their techniques for either quieting the internal dialogue or observing the internal dialogue without emotional attachment to it. Brief pause while I just have a little drink here. the idea is to allow thoughts to flow without being emotionally attached to them, and in so doing, cultivate silence, cultivate this tone of unconditional love. Unconditional love is the tone that you make when you are submerged in time and you are matching the tempo of the cosmic symphony. You are not thinking about the past. You are not anticipating or grasping for the future. And both of those things, if you think about the past, it's almost like you have ribbons trailing out behind you, like long, long, long time ribbons. And they're your thoughts, and you're connected to whatever event you're thinking about. Like, dinner last night was so delicious. I'm sending out ribbons of my mind that connect to, that delicious pizza that I had last night. And what the problem with that is that I'm sitting in the garden here right now. I'm having the sensory experience of this moment right now. And when I'm using my mind, my human operating system, to disperse my awareness over time, then I become a less focused broadcaster of this present moment now. And we are all endeavoring to become better focused broadcasters back to the sun. This not only benefits you, like it's good for your health, it gives you more vitality, it gives you access to more chi. And unconditional love is the fuel that we use to make our higher faculties work, to make things like telepathy work. It's also positive for the planet and for the rest of creation, or the rest of what is here. We are all intertwined timelines, or musicians in a symphony. And when one organism or group of organisms is out of tune, it's affecting everyone. So we all endeavor to bring our own instrument into tune, and we know that by doing that, we are uplifting and positively affecting the cosmic symphony. And the same thing in the opposite direction. If you choose not to cultivate your mind, to think a lot of random thoughts and have a lot of negative emotional explosions as a result of that, then you're not a good musician. And you definitely should not be, like the first chair or in front of the microphone. Like, you should be buried in the background or sent to the periphery, because the highly trained musicians are the ones that should be the models or setting the tempo for the rest of what is going on here. So practice meditation and mindfulness. And as you begin to do so, this allows you space against emotional reactivity, and eventually you occupy your true mind. Like I described, when I am painting, I am occupying my true mind. And also my process of painting is all about cultivating my flow. So I have all of my tools lined up. I have all of my circle templates lined up. I don't have to think. And that's one of the things that is so challenging about doing digital artwork. For me, it never felt like a comfortable flow. It felt very like a herky-jerky motion, where I had to slow down my natural way of doing things so that I could figure out exactly how to do things on the computer. And it's so wonderful and free and fun and direct for me to simply pick up a pencil and draw a line and to feel it with my body. So I really love the act of making artwork with my body. And I also find that when I just draw something on a computer or tablet, I'm only using little tiny gestures, very small muscle movements, not really using my whole body. When I'm painting on a 4-foot painting, I am able to make something that's life-size, using my whole body, drawing a giant circle, and those circles and the patterns that are there are relating to and reflecting off of and interacting with my format and my body and who I am. So this is the idea that our bodies and our body presence, our kinesthetic body presence, has a value. I have to speak about this because there's so much going on with the transhumanist agenda. And this is basically an agenda that is like taking people away from their kinesthetic experience. The idea of virtual reality. If you put on a set of goggles and earphones and are submerged in a sensorium that says this is like a forest or this is a street scene, you're really only using 2 of your senses. You're not using your smell taste, you're not using your kinesthetic sense, and you're also not using your higher sense, what we would call, the 6th sense, which is really a type of magnetic sense, like sensing an energy field. When I walk in the forest with the beautiful redwood trees, I'm able to sense their energy field. And this is the type of sense that you have, like if you sat in a room with your eyes closed and a perfectly silent person walked into the room, you would be able to sense that someone is in there. If you've ever felt like someone is in the room with me, someone's watching me, that's what you're feeling. It is a higher faculty. And in this time and place, the higher faculty has been almost totally devalued, so people aren't cultivating it or listening to it or noticing it. And this is all intentional, part of the transhumanist agenda, to bring people away from their intuition, their guts, their kinesthetics, and prepare them to be inserted into a realm that actually loses some aspect of experience, that is fake artifice, not in a good way. So I spoke about this in the past many times, art versus artifice versus evil technology, because artifice is not inherently evil. And technology is not inherently evil. We must make a distinction between these artificially created formats or structures that are not imbued with life and something that is alive. Like genetically modified corn, even though it's GMO, it is alive. It has consciousness and awareness in it. And no matter how skillfully I paint a photorealistic image of a painting of a flower, it's not alive. It does not have cellular structure and the capacity to actually grow and the spark of life that makes things grow. So there's nothing wrong with creating art. There is something wrong with creating things that are not conforming to the harmonic pattern of consciousness as it flows in the cosmos. And that pattern is like the symphonic score, the musical score of this world that we are inhabiting. It is the possibilities and probabilities, the timelines, the things that can happen. It's not just the world that we see with our eyes and, feel with our senses. It's the world of time. And this is what I'm speaking about when I say that your genes are a bridge that connects your physical body to the world of time. It's not just the expression of what you are shaped like, which is what science describes it as. I just need to drink a little water. Oh, and part of this is the way that science, the methodology that science uses to perceive the world, which is to dissect an object in order to understand it, or cut it up into smaller pieces and analyze each of the smaller pieces, without recognizing that when you cut something up into smaller pieces, you are destroying the whole, so you're not perceiving it as it behaves as a whole. And one example is recent findings about the lymphatic system and the immune system in the meninges of the brain, which up until this point, science has not been able to adequately perceive and study because they always took slices. They took mouse brains, and they sliced them up into, 1 micron thick slices and then used that in order to perceive it. They didn't start to understand what was going on in the meninges until they looked at it as a whole. And then they were able to see, there are actually like vesicles, there are actually the way that your blood flows through a structure. It's not just free-flowing blood. It goes through your veins and arteries. They were able to see there are structures that actually carry the lymph throughout the meninges. So this is just a brief, aside. Science doesn't get a lot of things because what it does in order to get things is chops them up into lots and lots of small pieces and then looks at the pieces. And this is what science does to the human genome. In order to understand any genes, even if it's not human, what science does is takes the whole and then puts it in a blender, chops it all up into pieces, and then separates it out into its constituent elements. So if you had, let's say, for example, a Christmas sweater that had a knitted pattern on it that looked like Snoopy, and if you were an extraterrestrial from another world and this was the artifact that you were given to study, and if you practiced science's way of studying it, you would take all of the yarn that's in the sweater, unfurl the entire sweater, so there's no more knitting, then take all of that yarn and, chop it up in a blender, and then dissolve it with a bunch of solvents, and then separate out the various different chemicals and colors. There's some red color, there's some green color, some white, some black, some of this other, stuff that's over there. And then measure, how much of each thing is there, and then say, we have really understood this artifact. But of course, that doesn't say anything at all about the picture that those various proportions of, dye created. Nothing about Snoopy, nothing about the cultural significance of Snoopy and why his image would be woven into a sweater, or who wears a sweater, why is it shaped like this, why does it have two long tubes and one big fat tube and a hole here and a hole here, why is it shaped like this? Science does not look at any of those aspects in terms of looking at the genetic code. So science doesn't look at genes as a whole, the way that they are acting when they are intact, because I've described to you that genes are not static objects. They are constantly dancing. They are moving and shifting and being spliced, cut and spliced and unfurled and spliced back together. And all of this is necessary because of the supercoiling, or the high energy way that these genes have been formatted to fit themselves into a small amount of space. So some of the time they're unfurled and they're open and they can be read, but some of the time they are curled up, and it takes a lot of energy to curl them up in this way. And then in order to actually access them, you have to use enzymes to cut the tension to get into those places so you can even read them. So, and of course, this is how genetically modified organisms are created, through an artificial enzymatic snipping and insertion of other codes into the original code. Just drinking water. Of course, science right now has not done any of its genetic splicing with respect to the harmonic structure of energy as it flows in the cosmos. And this harmonic structure, it's what I paint paintings of all the time. You can see examples of it if you go to flyingrainbowlasagna.com, and that's lasagna with an E on the end, and you can check out my art page there. Or you can go to my YouTube page, Flying Rainbow Lasagna, and check out many of my videos there. Or you can even just go to the ucy.tv homepage for this radio show, Birth of a New Dimension. And it's connected to the Twitter feed. I have tons of images of my artwork posted there, so that people that are listening to my voice, I paint a picture with my voice, but I really want for you to be able to see these images. And one of the reasons why I communicate through images, when I first came into this world 15 years ago, I immediately started drawing these patterns, and it developed into, complex paintings, and eventually became my present level of work. All of that is intentional, because I really perceived that it's not adequate to use words to describe this. Words themselves distort. It is a hacked operating system. Language is a virus. This is not an effective tool for communication. And I really find that abstractions, such as visual imagery, what some people describe as sacred geometry, but what I describe more impeccably as the interdimensional language of color, line, shape, form, movement, texture, and tone. These are images that speak to you beyond your hacked operating system. And also tone is in there, tone meaning like la 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 la, music. Music also gets past the filters of our hacked operating system and our, the language virus that we're constantly running, and affects us on a deep level. So if you do something like sit in meditative silence while you look at an image such as a mandala or some other symmetrical aspect of this, language of vibration, and you listen to some abstract music, such as Tibetan singing bowls, what you are doing is getting beyond the limitations of your present operating system in order to reach your true mind. And our true mind is connected to the source. It's 43 minutes into this broadcast, and I finally got to the point that I'm trying to make, which is we are all intended to be conduits for consciousness coming from the source and then broadcasting it right back to the source. Not collecting 75 or 100 years worth of collected memories, and then at the last moment of our life, handing in our hard drive and saying, here's all those memories I've been storing up for you. No, ah ha ha ha, I clutch my pearls, how silly. We are supposed to be sending those memories as we're experiencing them. We are the feelers photons are feelers, and we are solidified light. We are the feelers of this higher consciousness network. And this higher consciousness is divine. It's not the God of the Bible. If you have ever, if you've had religious indoctrination and you're an atheist, or if you are just turned off to religion, some people feel God is a 3-letter word, like a dirty word, and it's really not. When we are describing God as this abstract presence, this source of consciousness and also destination of consciousness that we emanate from. And our endeavor is to be the embodiment of God here in this physical reality. And it's been about 15,000 years where humans have been cut off from our source and not able to effectively say, this is what is going on, this is what we're experiencing. And so, of course, like I said, we are like children, and this is a very divine parent. It's very loving. Our parent wants to take care of us, wants each one of us to have all of the food, water, nourishment, love, and fun and joy that we require to have, because those are experiences on a timeline. You think about this. You could just be given, pablum for food and sit in a room and never go anywhere, never do anything. Your life is what your life is. Or you could be given new, different tastes, new flavors every day. You can meet new people. You can go places. You can make things. You can be creative and make, art or music projects. They're two totally different qualities of existence, and they are not comparable. We are not here merely to be eaters, you're just supposed to eat and poop. No. The quality of consciousness of that life is very low. We are actually here in order to have a high quality of consciousness, to learn and grow as individuals. This is what we are here for. So I've also said this before. We're not really here in the schoolhouse of the cosmos, just drinking. What is supposed to be a schoolhouse for learning is actually a distorted funhouse. We're supposed to be in a schoolhouse where what you send out gets reflected back to you. And just like a fun house in a circus or something like that has distorted mirrors that make you look either stretched out or squashed flat or, bumpy in the middle, that's what this reality is. Because of the consciousness invaders, and I speak about that every week, I think, and I don't mean to focus so much attention on it, because just as there are evil beings or malevolent beings that have harmed the human genome, there are helpful beings, really divine spiritual presences, and they are sworn or promised or intending in every way to help raise the quality of awareness. And I am connected to those people. Those are the values that I promote, and those beings are very real. So please take heart, even though we are in a very difficult time right now. We are facing a very spiritual challenge. It is just like the crowning moment of birth. This is why I call this radio show Birth of a New Dimension. And birth is incredible. It's duress. Duress from the French, meaning hardness. It is difficult. Not that I want to set everyone up for, the expectation of difficulty, but it is a real challenge. And of course, during birth, both mother and child are given all sorts of assistance, both physical and non-physical. There are, of course, midwives and doctors and nurses and helpers in the physical realm. In the non-physical realm, there are all sorts of spiritual or energetic or aspects of awareness that are happening in order to make birth possible. So these interdimensional helpers are absolutely a part of our experience, or you could call them higher dimensional. These are not occupiers of the interstices. These are not beings that live on the membrane. These are beings that live in the next highest octave. Beings who have already graduated or used to be in the band, but now they're in even a more selective band. Yes, there are a lot of benevolent presences that are also here in order to assist, and I have to give balance, because I feel like I spend a lot of time talking about the malevolent occupiers of the interstices and how that caused the degradation of human consciousness. And I really have to say just as often and just as strongly that right now we are reascending the ladder of consciousness. We are returning to our rightful place as real-time broadcasters connected to the stellar network, and we have a lot of help in doing so. And there are loud musicians in the band that are really taking a lot of the focus. Like, you can really hear that kettle drum. That's really, really loud. It might be harder to hear the piccolo, high flute in the background. That's what you really have to listen for. And that's why we practice meditation and mindfulness. Turn off the hacked operating system and get into your true mind. And you will begin to connect with this higher level of consciousness, and it is not a verbalized understanding. So I will also tell you that when I get my insights, they are not given to me in the form of verbalized instruction or verbalized conversation. They come in an abstract packet of information that feels like, quote unquote, a download, like, whoosh, here's a bunch of energy. And then I access that energy and put it through my filter of understanding, which is the English language and this body in this time and place. And usually it comes out as a painting or a drawing and something that I can point to and describe in order to share this information. When I perceive the energy centers or the chakras on the body, I simply see them and I understand innately what they are and what they do. There is no narrator, no narrative voice that says red means this, orange means this. So we're talking about accessing one's true mind. And this is what we are here cultivating. And when you are in your true mind and you are connecting to the stellar network, you are a part of really immortal consciousness. You are a part of a network of consciousness that does not die and continues onward endlessly. So your temporal ego is temporal because it is submerged in time. These are the aspects of you that come and go. Like, that's my favorite blue sweater. But that won't always be your favorite blue sweater, because either you'll get a new sweater or you'll get a new body, or you'll move to a place where sweaters are no longer relevant. So we are talking about your identity should be based on your core values, your core sense of self, who you are beyond being defined by this time and place and your present human shape. You could have a totally different shape. You could be a totally different species. Who would you be? What would you be like if you were an elephant? What would you be like if you were a dolphin? What would you be like if you were an octopus on an alien world? Well, the answer is you are all of those things. There is only one photon. And I love this idea. It's from Richard Feynman, very unusual physicist from the mid-20th century. And he had the theory that there is only one photon, and it is constantly being emitted in time and having experiences and then returning to the source that emitted it and then being emitted again. And each of these sending out and then looping back, each of these loops, it's like an embroidery. If you've ever embroidered, it's making lots and lots of loops that turn into a picture on the surface of the cloth. And this is what we are seeing. Reality is the picture on the surface of time that is being embroidered by the endless journey of this amazing photon. So you are that photon, and you are every single creature that has ever existed. You are every single spark of consciousness that has ever existed. You're every malevolent being, you're every benevolent being that has ever existed. This is the beginning of the dilation of your identity. So I began at the beginning of this talking about the whole of the donut, the tour of the torus, the zeroth dimension, the presence of everything. You start to identify with everything. You start to identify with you are that photon that has endlessly emitted and returned, emitted and returned. That is your true awareness and your true consciousness. And the blue sweater, that's your favorite sweater that you're wearing right now, that's just the sweater that you're wearing right now. And in a different world, you wear a red sweater, and in a different world, you wear a yellow sweater. So we are now, I'm sharing with you now so that we can understand that there is a broader context of awareness and time. You are living your lives concurrently. This is not like, who do I pay to tell me about my past lives? And I'm mocking that, and I hope that everybody saves a whole bunch of money by listening to this broadcast, because you understand that you've all been everyone. All of us have all been everyone. I have been the flowers that I'm looking at right now in my garden, and I have been Adolf Hitler, and I have been Aurora, and I have been Jesus, and I have been the very best and the very worst, and all of the middle that fills up, the creamy filler in the middle. I am all of that, and you are too. I am all of you. This is the dilation of identity, and this is what begins to happen when, as awareness, we rejoin the stellar network. So I talk about achieving coherence in your light body, meaning that all of your waves are like laser light, which is coherent. All of the peaks and all of the troughs fit together coherently instead of going hither, thither, and yon and dispersing. When you cultivate your true values of who you really are as a person, then you are coherent. It's not your temporal identity. This is my blue sweater that I take with me everywhere through every life. No, your true identity is your true sense of self that wears the sweater of various different colors in various different existences. And you take it with you. You take your true essence, your true sense of self with you no matter where you go. This is how experts do star travel. Get on the stellar network and you transport your consciousness. And it's like having a bath that washes away everything that is not really you. And by the time you get to the other side, you are only your eternal self. Well, those are the beings whom one would wish to interact with. With whom? Those are the beings with whom one would wish to interact, to have come visit your planet, to create art projects with. Those are the beings that we are all trying to associate with. So this is preparation for birth of a new dimension, and we are at the crowning moment of that birth as we begin to meet and interact with otherworldly and other dimensional beings. Thank you so much for being with me on this journey. I will continue to tell more about it next week.